Shane Lohman, president of Five Star Beverage. That's about 3 months old now. Just had our wholesale craft beer distribution business acquired about 3 months ago and rolled right into this. So it is transition, but it's been an exciting stretch for sure.
Tell me a little bit, Shane, about what you're doing currently now that the Steel City deal's behind you and stuff like that. So what's Five Star, and walk me through what you guys are doing.
So it had probably popped into my mind a couple of years ago, just working with small to mid-sized craft breweries on a daily basis, just really providing them some guidance in what I like to call steps 2 and 3. Some of the bigger consulting firms, they're great. Got people that worked at places like Bud and Miller Coors and all that. But seeing how they worked with some of the breweries, the small and mid-sized craft breweries, it was a lot of high-level stuff that maybe they didn't always know what to do with or was ahead of where they were at. So really helping these breweries, just stuff, operational efficiency, distribution plans, how to put together a annual business plan, a brand strategy, sales tactics. A lot of these breweries have great liquid, and just trying to get them to that next level.
Is with your positioning and your past history, what are the types of, from a very generalized sense, what are the types of breweries that are successful in today's market? Because we can't compare apples to bowling balls to selling 5 years ago to 10 years ago. So kind of what is an ideal, what do you have, what boxes are checked for you as a brand when you're ready to go into wholesale? Let's take that for one topic.
So starting with, I always say pre-COVID, but the few years before that, I think a lot of these breweries had success. I don't want to say despite themselves, but honestly, probably despite themselves. It was a hot industry. Everybody that opened a brewery was selling beer. I think through the first year or so of COVID, a lot of the off-premise was booming. So a lot of these local breweries were doing a ton of to-go sales, and it was great. And the last 2 or 3 years, the industry's kind of leveled off and gotten to a maturation point where that's not the case anymore. And a lot of these breweries aren't having the success that they once had. And because they don't really know why they were successful, it's hard for them to figure out why they're struggling now. What we look for and what I think good distributors look for in brands that are presenting or brand, just a business plan, a sense of their business strategy, what their market value is, what the sales pitch is, the brand message, and how they can execute upon that. And it sounds simple for, I think, most people in business, but it's as I'm sure not as common as it should be in craft beer, where people just kind of, they're brewing 30 some SKUs a month, and there's a little bit of brewer ego in there, and I get it. It's their baby, and they're proud of their brewing abilities, and they think people are going to want to try it all. And for a sales team and a retailer, it's just overload. And it's, what are your cores? What's the brand message? A great example I always use is we sold Blake's Hard Cider at Steel City, and like our sales team knew, our management team knew what the sales pitch was. It was cider made with all locally grown fruit on a 3rd-generation family farm. It was better liquid than Angry Orchard. It was a comparable price point. And so when you went in and the branding and the packaging, reflected that. And when you looked at it, you got what the message was. And when you go into an account, you knew how to sell it. That's how you sell it. And that was the appeal to the consumer. And it's very straightforward, but I think a lot of brands need to kind of refine that or put that in place.
Yeah, shout out to Aaron on that one. I'm sure that's who sold you in on that. There you go.
Oh, yeah, I'm in a couple of weeks.
Nice. Yeah. I'm trying to get him on the podcast, so make sure you let him know when we see each other. So I like. I'm also in the hemp space as well. So I've been following his path outside of alcohol. So we have a partnership with Lancaster in Lancaster County here, Pennsylvania, with Cedar Meadow Hemp. So we do their regenerative farm, 3rd-generation farm, and we do sell their hemp out for their consumer products, as well as this year we're doing as the distillate and isolate into a raw material sales to beverages. So trying to get that quality product out there too as a raw material infusion into different beverages.
Awesome. Yeah, he's the best. I've known him for I think 8-9 years since Blake's come on with us, and seeing him and his kind of journey and where he's at now. He's doing the wholesale thing with the weed up there. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about for your area and where you currently are in the Pittsburgh area. Kind of like what made the jump eventually into consulting, and how's it been going for the first 3 months so far? Are you feeling like everybody you worked with prior is kind of coming on board, or are you still having to educate people? Because I mean, I'll commiserate with you. We're still educating people and understanding that they need that extra support and they need that extra perspective and that lens. So, like you said, it's whether it's the ego, whether it's the holding on to the baby, whether it's the financial piece, getting people to understand that they need that extra support and that fuel. Kind of talk through that a little bit. Is that still a challenge in today's market? Is getting people to understand not all consultants and outside agencies are bad,
Yeah. So I would say the thought started working with our brands, like I said, just knowing that they needed this help and how much it could benefit them. I think it was always a little bit of a tough dynamic as the wholesaler, because it was just a different dynamic. You weren't a consultant. Unfortunately, some of these breweries don't see you as a business partner like they should, and they just didn't want to hear it because of the ego. Some of them did. So we started talking to some of the brands we worked with. Yeah, I would say there's definitely some ego. It's not necessarily with more of our brands, but just as with the craft space as a whole, there's definitely some ego. But it's been good. The people that are receptive are super receptive to it. And the people that aren't are making their own bed there. And I think not bad rap, but like I said, with these bigger consulting companies, that's the only option that a lot of these craft breweries have had. And, when you go to one of these massive consulting companies and you're a small or mid-sized craft brewery and they're going to charge you 20 some grand a month and do sales trainings and give you IRI data, it's probably not what you need. It's overwhelming. It's a huge expense, and it can kind of turn you off, I think, a little bit to the consulting concept as a whole. So just kind of sitting with some of these breweries, and over the last month or so, I've really started to have these conversations. And like I said, the ones that get it, and just show them the value and how this is going to help them. They definitely see it.
Is anybody else from Steel City as well in this venture? Is this you by yourself? I'm also a solo entrepreneur as well. So I bring contractors in for projects. So
yeah, for now it's just me. I think coming from Steel City, which was a massive overhead and human management undertaking, it's been kind of nice to do this. We worked really hard to get everybody from Steel City placed, which I think for the most part we did, either with brands or wholesalers. So, getting everybody taken care of there. I think at some point I'd like to bring some people on board with this. But for now, it's just me. I'll say the dynamic of having Steel City acquired is a huge high, and it's a big win. And then it's been a little humbling starting from square one, like a month later. Like, oh, okay.
I remember. I love that you brought that up. I was going to bring it up anyway. I'm glad you had the same experience. When I went from, I was flying around the country, like recruiting breweries, and every conference I'd go to, people knew, they wanted to be in distribution. And it was in the time where you're talking about. It was the time where it didn't, if you were creative and you had some outside the box marketing, you could stand apart. But at the same time, everybody was manufacturing the same story. So it was like trying to get everything out there. And I'm talking 2011 to 2017. So in the height of all that, I'm flying around the country, bringing all these brands like Aaron and all these other people into Pennsylvania, New Belgium and Lagunitas, and just all this crazy stuff from that time. And I think about what you just said about the overhead and the labor, and then what you're doing there, and then the transition. When I left, I thought to myself, I was like, man, I got a Rolodex of 300 breweries that I've met personally. I've flown to their place. I said, this is going to be easy. And then as soon as I went solo and I started doing it on my own, it was like a whole different ball game. So when you're trying to explain to people that you're doing it, but also what I found is once they get that understanding that you're there for them and you're there in a customization standpoint, it's so important, like you said, about making people understand that it's not a consultancy agency. The actual future, and I say I'm proudly, since 2008, I've had this business. So when I worked with Ace, it was a contract with Ace through FreeMind. So it was one of those things where they were a client of mine. And I don't know if you ever remember the Beer Ace program. It was like a guy, like a Red Baron with a scarf. So that was me. So that was my face. So that's the context of where we are with it, to try to bring it all in a little closer together. So yeah, me and Joe DeMarco used to do all that stuff. I don't know if you met him over at
Yeah,
I'm losing the name or Inco.
Yeah. They were one of they took our rights they bought our rights for most of their counties. So it was a two distributor deal that acquired us, one in the city and one outside. But he was great to work with. I got introduced to him through, I think, Doug Smith late last year, and Joe's great.
Yeah, Joe, I've known Joe for a long time. I have a family property over in Somerset County, so he was right down by Indian Lake. So he's, a mile crows flies away from me. I just get to see him every once in a while. But who was the other company that bought you guys? That bought the acquired?
Galli. So it was the Pabst wholesaler. They have some craft brands as well. I think actually the last 2-3 years, even before taking on our portfolio, they added some pretty nice craft brands. So I think that's been, a mission of theirs, is to build out the craft portfolio.
Yeah, they've been growing a lot in the past 10 years as far as acquisitions and expansion. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, it was just that kind of shotgun approach, but then they kind of really started getting into the markets a lot deeper.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, let's talk a little bit about what the market today. Let's go through, like, we've both been through it. We've been through the days of the, Pete's Wicked Ale all the way through to where we are today with the on-premise market the way it is. What are some of the things, the strategies that you are seeing people having success with? And it doesn't have to be anybody in your portfolio, but just in general, like, what are in navigating today's crazy times?
Yeah. So the point I always use to see, like, if I walk into a bar with my girlfriend, does she recognize your product? Now, she's not a big beer drinker, but she knows. I mean, I sold New Trail, but the Southern Tier, New Trail, the Voodoo Ranger stuff. Again, when you see all these brands that they brew really good beer, and that's kind of where it stops. It's how do you differentiate yourself? Because right now the market's a glut of all these breweries. And over, I would say, the next 1 to 3 to maybe 5 years, that's going to start people are just going to die off. And the way I present it as a positive is look, this isn't complicated. If we put these foundations in place, you're going to set yourself up for success and sustainable profit and growth. And you're going to be one of the breweries that not only stays around, but takes advantage of the opportunity and grows and succeeds. It's just a glut right now of brands that all brew good beer, but it's all similar and there's not a lot of differentiation. But, in that, it creates a lot of opportunity for a few to separate themselves. That's where
I talk a little. This is just 10, 15 years ago. I was sitting at I think it was Earth and Bread Brewery up in Philadelphia area with a friend of mine, Mike Dudley, who works at Amazon now, but he used to work at Origlio. And we were talking, this is 15 years ago, and he was saying that the most challenging thing for breweries in the future, and I give him full credit for this prediction, was telling their own individual stories.
Yeah.
And I think that has been the number one thing that I've seen over the past 20 years, and especially in the past 5 and 10 years, is, like you said, the amount of people. It's like it went from we're all unique and we're all rebels to we're all one giant thing and we're all doing the same exact thing. And I think that what you said there too is telling your story. And I think that there's too many times where I sit down with these manufacturers and brands, and they're worried about the colors and the hue and the design of the graphics and all that. And really, at the end of the day, when you strip all that and you just tell their story, it's actually a really unique story. And not a lot of people aren't using that as their leverage point, whether it's their self-confidence or they think that they should lead with the beer. I think that what they're finding it as a pain point is having trouble telling that story.
Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be, I mean, it helps, but it doesn't always have to be a story about the founder or where you started brewing it in your garage. As long as there's a story. I mean, some of the biggest brands, that they'll create it with a marketing company, but there's a story to attach to that will stick in people's minds. As long as some of that is there, that helps.
Yeah, talk about, like, let's say about a brand like New Trail. Like, this podcast is outside of Pennsylvania; it's nationwide, so many people don't know about New Trail. Let's take the one like that, for example. It has an exponential growth track that kind of went through Pennsylvania, and you were with them, I'm assuming, since the beginning of that. So kind of walk through that growth, not necessarily in the beginning, but let's say, like, walk through that growth of bringing that brand in and seeing it grow as it's grown through.
Again, it just started by people that had a business background. And then they started with that. They started with a business plan and brought in people that could brew really good beer. And, I don't want to oversimplify it, but they treat it like a business. They've done it really well. They've executed at a high level, but, from a distributor or a selling standpoint, it's resources, it's marketing campaigns, it's sales support, investment. I don't want to say little stuff, but like we have cornhole boards to give away. We have backpacks. We have hoodies and beanies for your sales team. We're going to have sales market support, sales support in market, out in the market helping you sell. The branding looks really good. They've done it at scale. They've done it with 12 packs, 15 packs, 19.2s, the stuff that works. To be able to go in, I don't want to name other names, but some of these crap brands, you go in and there's a 4-pack lager for $16. Like at this point, it's just not working. Outside of being like human robot, it's just not going to work for you. But when you can go in and get a 15-pack of the New Trail Crisp Lager for $18.99 or $17.99, those volume packages, and that takes investment. So the business plan, the business structure, and the investment makes a huge difference. And the brand story. I mean, you think of the outdoors, you think of hiking, and it connects with a segment of people. Maybe they're not everything to everybody, but they mean a lot to the group that they have. I can't tell you how many people I know or come across that enjoy kayaking or rafting or hiking that maybe aren't huge beer fans, but they've seen New Trail out and they love it. They connect with it, and they're not going to drink hazy IPAs or sours every weekend and trying the new stuff. But this brand message connects with them. They know what the brand message is, and they stick with the brand. They're loyal customers to the brand. And that brand message combined with like the investment and the business plan, it's done wonders for them.
And that's the number one thing I think it's hard for people to understand is the days where, like, it's safe to say, and this is not some nihilist comment, the days of putting it on and stacking it high and watching it fly and putting it on the shelf and letting it sell itself, they're long gone and never coming back, I don't think. And that's where one of those, go ahead. Yep. As far as that is.
I mean, and I think it's hitting retailers too, where I've seen retailers in the market where they have shelves and shelves just dedicated to loads of this crap. It's good beer, but it's just not selling. No one knows what it is. There's no logo or brand. The amount of stuff that we sold where you'd look at the can, turn it around and still be unsure of who brews it, that you just wanted to rip your hair out while you're standing in these accounts. And the retailers are dealing with it now because their inventory costs. It's just sitting on the shelf. It's dying. And I think one of the things that I've tried to communicate to breweries a lot in the last couple of months, starting to work with them, is, guys, once you get pulled off of shelves, it's going to be really hard to get back on. So let's not do that. We don't need to offer 17 SKUs a month because and it's hard to scale the sales. It's hard to, find 1 or 2 or 3 things that we do really well and just hammer it, because you'll earn, they'll love it. Retailers will love it. Sales teams will love it. It's simple. It's easier to execute, and you can scale it. But the amount of stuff that's starting to sit on retailer shelves, that's what I've seen early in this year, is retailers finally getting to a point where it's like, we're not just going to stock all this stuff just to have a good craft selection. Yeah. We're dying here.
Joe DeMarco used to have some funny phrases, and I wish I still had a book. I read it was called the Book of Joeisms, and it was just his years of history in the industry, and he had every cliched line in the world he would drop. And one of them was with beer. Sometimes it was if it was coming around on its 1 year inside and we were creeping up on a year in the building or in the place, it was having a birthday, and that was always, he'd be like, oh, look at this birthday beer over here. And then the other one was, if it's going really long, it's growing a beard. And And those two phrases were the degree in which you knew how long something was sitting. And he taught me one thing that I went through and used as a tactic, and I'll never forget it. And it only started with when craft beer came out, which was a dust test. So I would go through, and if something wasn't going, I would just swipe my finger across the top of the can and walk up to the buyer and say, "Hey, are we still going to keep this, or are we building some artwork or something?" You know what I mean? Like, whatever you need to say in a way to make people realize that while I'm a big craft beer advocate, I always have been. My whole career is built on craft beer as the primary source of it. I wouldn't be able to do anything in my life if I didn't excel in craft beer like I did in the business side of things. With that said, the industry needs a huge pivot, and like you're saying as well, the business acumen needs to come out. And I have been through too many conversations with breweries that need help, and they just refuse help because they can't see the forest from the trees. And whether it's them being in their own way or being in the way of everything else, I think that we're at a point now where, especially with what's going on in the on-premise, where I'm sure you can agree with this, where if those people don't make the right investments, their days are numbered in the next few years. Like if you're still thinking you can glide through and not take a strategic approach and tactical approach to your business, you're going to get lost really quickly soon.
Yeah, and I think some of it's denial, where you kind of know you're in trouble, but you're worried you've let it go too long, and you start to panic. I don't know if you watch The Office, but I always use that scene from The Office where Pam wants to wait to go to the hospital, and then she waits too long, and then she starts to freak out because I've waited too long, and then it makes it worse because you panic. It's all right. Like you can fix it. This is fixable, but we've got to do it now. And I think for so long we treated the craft brewery market like with kid gloves, like buyers, retail accounts with a big brand. They would have always said, this has been here 3 months. It's not moving. Either take care of it or I'm not bringing new stuff in. Where they didn't want to say that to craft breweries. I don't know if they thought, they're special or they won't want to sell me this. I don't know, but it never developed that accountability for craft breweries. They never got held accountable, a lot of them. And now they're going to start being held accountable and they're not sure what's happening or what to do with it. And it's, as a retailer, I've said that to retailers, like, you got to start pulling some of this stuff off the shelf. You have stuff, cash sitting here, you're pouring more into it. And I think as that transition starts to happen, especially in the on-premise, like you said, it was always tough because when we were selling a craft brand into the on-premise and it did really well, buyers would say, well, that did really well, but I'm going to bring something else in. So even when you were succeeding, because of the market the way it was tough to build that success. And I think that's going to start to change now, where on-premise buyers and even off-premise buyers are going to start to stick more and more with what works and what's supporting them. If you're giving us resources and programming and support, not only are we going to keep buying because it's working, but you're supporting us. That's going to help the breweries that do have their stuff together, because the atmosphere is going to change to where, it enables them to succeed more.
It's challenging too. And then it'll be with which brands are aligned with which distributors, because since post-COVID, some distributors shed their craft development and business development programs. They got rid of those divisions, and whether they became NA divisions or they got rid of them completely, that's something that isn't there anymore. That brand, and that's a general way to say it, isn't there anymore. There's a lot of wholesalers that still have their brand building teams and things like that. But, craft breweries, and, myself included, we did have hand holding in a lot of ways through those markets by the distributors and certain people like myself and others that really went above and beyond for it. And I don't say that as a touting thing. I say that as a wake up call for what's moving forward, because the hand holding can't exist anymore. These wholesalers got beat up themselves, in a million different ways. They did their acquisitions and stuff, but their whole business has changed as well. It's like some of them are still doing brand building, but some of them changed to an entire just order taking system. And for a craft brewery to navigate and break through that's where the craft brewery responsibility comes in, and that responsibility falls on that manufacturer to get their brand in front of there. Because at the end of the day, a distributor is two things. A distributor can be a delivery vessel, and you run your brand and they just take it, and that's how your relationship works. Or the distributor is with you and as a partner and as a collaborator. And I think that until people realize that there's two paths, they need to choose one. I don't know, speak off my soapbox a little bit of it. Yeah, but
it always shocked me how unwilling breweries were to treat distributors as a partner. I dealt with it every day, but I've talked to my buddies at other wholesalers, whether they're brand managers, and they just get destroyed by their brands every day. They're getting screamed at and pissed on and all, and it's just like, this should be your partner. And that's one of the big things. And like you said early on, I think one of the things that differentiates me is that I've done it firsthand. I'm not, no knock. You worked at Bud for 20 years and you start a consultancy and, you're just kind of repackaging information. There's value there to somebody, but having done it on the front lines, the big thing I've been pushing to these breweries is treat them like a partner. It sounds funny, but treat it like a dating relationship. You're going to get what you give. So if I start dating someone,
I used to tell people marriage, because it's that perpetuity contract is divorce or death, and it's ugly either way. So I think I'm with you. And I used to tell people it's a marriage. Yep. And
if you're stuck in that marriage, you got to do everything you can to build the relationship. Just constantly screaming and fighting, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So when you're a bad partner, you can't complain the other person's a bad partner. But again, there's opportunity there. Like these these distributors may not be committed to brand building every craft brand they can find, but a lot of them are sitting there with a glut of brands in the portfolio, probably trying to cut some of them. And if you can differentiate yourself with with distributor support, sales support, resources, just investment in building the relationship, even if it's not huge money, even if it's just time and effort and communication and support, if you can commit that, it's a high margin product. Distributors are still going to want to sell it. So there's opportunity there. And especially now, being able to differentiate yourself, you're going to stand out even more.
It's like, it doesn't, a lot of distributors or breweries might listen to this, or distilleries and wineries, and say, oh, well, I don't have the money to invest in all the tchotchke items and things like that. And it's like, well, that's okay, because I can tell you from anecdotally my experience in the past 20 years as a brand manager, as a brand owner, as well as on the other side of the supplier end, the most successful, and I mean every scale of just success and meaning progress and growth, were ones that just had a cadence with their distributor. It didn't involve anything of materials. It was just having a cadence and a relationship. And once you have that cadence, whether it's monthly, quarter, and I suggest monthly on everybody, I think that every brand manager, as I was one that we had 135, I think, in our portfolio, but I still made an effort to be accessible on a monthly basis to every single person for 30, 60 minutes, depending upon what volume they were. But everybody got time with me every month, no matter what size they were in the portfolio. And I think that breweries have been so burned, and whether they hid in the back or they just gave up, I think that they lost that cadence and that relationship. And then it became the finger pointing of the distributor pointing at the supplier because they're not proactive enough. And then the supplier pointing at the distributor that they're not pushing their brand enough, when really it's like, it's that human connection was lost and disjointed. And if we just got back to a regular routine, we could realize, like, I don't know, you could speak a little bit about that and how organic, more, it doesn't need to be manufactured as much as, like, we've lost that organic connection that really can bring the business back.
Yeah. And I think, I had to learn it as well. So I understand, but we're all humans. We all just want to be appreciated and feel supported. And taking it back to the marriage thing, like, that's one of the concerns that we've had from breweries starting to talk to them is like, all right, we're going to, invest in bringing you on to help us. We're going to go to our big distributor. We don't have tens of thousands of dollars to spend every month. And it doesn't have to be that. Like, again, taking it back to the marriage thing, I'm a big watch guy. If a girl bought me a watch, it may not mean as much as if I came down in the morning and there's a note on the breakfast table like, hey, you're crushing it, I bought you breakfast. You can do it with little things. Even as the distributor owner, we had breweries where we sold millions of dollars worth of their product, and they never came to market once. If they would have just sent me a hoodie to give to the team and said, hey, you guys are crushing it for us, I appreciate it. It goes such a long way. And now all of a sudden, I'm nicer to them the next time I call. And, like, it just builds in a positive way. And you just call every month and say, instead of saying numbers are down, what the hell's wrong with you? And just making it a negative. Hey, I thought we're a little down. What can I do? Can I send $100 for a couple salespeople to get lunch or whatever it is? So there's little things that we can put in place. Like, even if you go to Reyes or the biggest distributors, the brand managers, the sales managers, they're still people. If you just support them, appreciate them, it's going to go such a long way. So being able to communicate that to some of these breweries, I think, has been refreshing and eye-opening, where it's like, if we can just change the dynamic a little bit and make you an overly supportive partner, you don't need tens of thousands of dollars.
And I think that comes, unfortunately, you have to go so far with the trust thing. I think people like yourself that are out in the industry, that have the experience and have the receipts to prove it, so to speak, that allows for you to be higher value to anybody else, because you're not reading a textbook. You didn't just graduate with your MBA. You're not trying to teach them some organizational structure. You've situationally managed multiple different complex craft brands in a very rural and also metro market. Like, so what I would say to your market specifically is, you've experienced both ends of the rural market, the suburban market, and the metro market. With Steel City and the brands you have, you've also had a complex diversity of brands in that portfolio. If I was a brewery that was looking to work with you, that's the type of people that I want to work with, because when the shit hits the fan and the fires are burning, the situational management that can be handled with somebody that has the experience and isn't scrolling through, looking on YouTube or pulling up a textbook and everything like that. I think compliments to you for doing this. And I want to like do anything I can in the future too, to let you know, to promote what you're doing, because more people like you need to exist that have experienced it and aren't just coming in for a cut a check. They understand the industry. They understand there's value and there's a sustainable part of the business, but there's so much more than what you can read in a magazine or in an article in order to help these brands to be successful.
No, I appreciate it. And I think, especially as I've started to do the consulting thing, is you see all these people on LinkedIn and on social media that are like, I went to business school, I took this course, I took all that.
Gurus.
And it's like, great. I mean, business school's great, but like you said, you're reading through a textbook. How do we, change our brand strategies? And it's like, dude, I know from experience, if you just go buy a driver team, each turkeys before Thanksgiving, or like a bunch of hot dogs and burgers before 4th of July, if you walked in and did that as a brand, you spent $200 on hot dogs before 4th of July to take care of a driver team, you rocket up a wholesale portfolio. Like, those drivers want to take care of your stuff. The brand manager's happy you're taking care of his drivers. Like, that is stuff that you just won't learn in the textbook, and that the little stuff, again, you don't have to overly invest to make a big difference.
I think that there's that. And also, like, I didn't get a lot of, let's just say I didn't get a lot of positive feedback from other distributors, but when I was a brand manager at Ace and stuff like that, I was a proponent of, you need to distribute yourself right off the bat.
Yeah.
And people were really uncomfortable. Distributors didn't like me telling people that, but I felt like the brands that came in that were the most successful, in addition to knowing their story, was being able to have that connection, that cadence, have that business acumen. And the third thing was, if they actually had experience in doing a drive, answering a call from a customer, doing that Friday hot shot before the weekend, getting that check, chasing that check, doing all those different things that have to happen, allows for the ones that have done that in the past. I feel like also have that stronger relationship with their distributor, because they're not just wondering what's going on behind the curtain. They know the effort and the work that goes into, it's not as easy as getting it from point A to point B. There's a million touch points in between there.
Yeah, and I think that shows through, just communicating with people. And I think other people that have done that have that respect, or people that are looking for help, it shows through, and they can tell that you're bringing real content and value. And there's really no replacement for that experience, for having gone through it and done it yourself. I remember we were leaving a beer fest one time. The girl I was dating at the time, I had a Tesla, and we needed to take like 2 jockey boxes, 2 CO2 tanks, like 9 empties from the festival. And the truck had left, and she's like driving with 2 kegs on her lap, which is probably not even legal, but like, as we get 2 empties on her lap. And it's just like little stuff like that you've gone through it and kind of know how to navigate the different situations that you really can't get from a textbook or from a course.
No, and it's funny you said that, because I don't know if I've told this on this podcast before. When I lived in Philadelphia and worked with Auriglio, it's things like that. Those scenarios, we all have dozens of those scenarios, whether it be a Friday or a Saturday. And I think of one where I don't know if you were in it as long as we had the Molson money machine. If you ever saw that, and when we took this, it was this huge monstrosity, and we brought it onto the bars, and it hooked up to this this blower, and it blew the money around everywhere, and people would go inside the machine and try to catch the money.
Yeah,
this is probably oh man, I'm probably 2004, 2005, 2006 at this point. Anyway, I'm working in downtown in Philadelphia, and one of my accounts had the machine, but the merchandiser was stuck in traffic on 76. And I was in the middle of the city trying to get to this other place that's on the other side of the city. And I lived in the city at that time, but there was traffic everywhere. I literally drove, went to my house, got on my bike, rode my bike down the Schuylkill Expressway into traffic, got the Molson money machine, we duct taped it all to my back, and then I rode down 76 through the downtown to get the thing down to the account. And everybody's sitting there because it was like one of those events where the Molson reps were there, like Molson Coors was there, and of course that's the day the traffic hits, and we're on opposite ends of the city. And I did the hour and a half or whatever the hell it took, bike ride across, and I show up there, and I'm in like my khakis, my button down, my like long sleeve, and I'm just sweating, I'm soaked to the bone. And and I think of that, people say that like, oh, what are you proud of about that? But no big deal. It's like, no, it's because most people would sit back and go, oh, well, there's traffic, let's figure something else out. No, you got to situationally manage that and say, how do we still make this happen, and what is not possible?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is so straightforward. And again, I think there's ego, and like people came into the craft business and they're like, we've got to do it differently and we are different, when it's like the stuff that works. There was a consulting website of some big firm that I don't even know if they were strictly beverage. I was looking through it yesterday, and 5 minutes into reading through the site, I still had no idea what actual services they offered. Just like now data analysis and like research, and they just kept using these buzzwords where it's like, this stuff's straightforward. We're not trying to overcomplicate it. And it doesn't, one of the big things I've tried to tell breweries is just because you're bringing in a consultant doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing.
Yep.
You know, there's people I know that are really good business people that use business coaches, you know, people that can see it from 10,000 feet and give them constant feedback. Doesn't mean that you're incapable or don't know what you're doing. And just having that, the humility to come in and say, look, we could use a little help. It's better than sitting there 2-3 years from now and saying like, oh, we failed, we're bankrupt. You know, we could have done something and we didn't. This stuff's real straightforward. It's based from experience. We just, you know, it's not a bad thing to bring in a consultant.
No, and it can be really formulaic. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be as creative as we're talking about. It doesn't have to be as extreme as we're talking about. Obviously, you don't have to ride across the city with a Molson machine on your back to be able to succeed.
That makes a difference.
But I think that what you're saying is really important, that people need to understand that, you know, it is fundamentals and it is that basic. And yeah, it can get creative as far as the customer experience, but the process in which getting it and choosing the right product for the right account, it's a data-driven decision. It's also, there's an art and a science to it. You know, it's getting the right brands in the right liquor stores, or not in our area, beer distributors, liquor stores, whatever you want to call them, bottle shops, package stores, case stores. You know, those things, that evolution, and also on the retail side, you know, those retailers, I feel for them sometimes because they weren't, you know, they didn't get into this business to be an encyclopedia of beer. And I think that was something that's something that in order for them to be what they need to be for those customers, that's a challenge in itself on an education standpoint from a retailer side.
Yeah, I think, like I said, just because of the way the market was, it was hot, and the way it was growing for probably 10 years or so allowed a lot of these breweries to grow and succeed without real business foundations. We were on I think we've closed in February on the acquisition. We were on an ABP call in January, which, first of all, if you're doing an ABP after the start of the year, you've gone wrong as a brewery. But the brewery started to communicate to us that they weren't sure what the cost to brew their core IPA was, but they were onboarding Ecos, so that would figure it out for them. And I just thought to myself,
technology will save us.
You know, I always use the analogy of like, if we're going to start a lemonade stand tomorrow, let's figure out how much it costs us to make a batch of lemonade, what we need to sell it for to be able to sell it competitively on this street corner, and how many we think we can sell. So is it worth our time to stand out there and sell it all day?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now if there's a lemonade stand on every block, what differentiates us? Is it cheaper, or do we have a better brand story that I grew lemons that are organic and from Italy or whatever? What, you know, if someone walks by, why are they going to buy our lemonade? And starting with that super basic, you know, premise with some of these breweries, you do have to kind of work through some of that ego, because it's a human nature thing. If I started a spaghetti restaurant, I would do it because I thought I had the best spaghetti in the world. But maybe you don't. Maybe you have but you know, there's more to it than that. So like, how much does our lemonade, dude, the amount of breweries that I've talked to that are selling beer that don't even know if they're making money on it, like, you're just doing yourself a disservice. Like, you may be scaling loss. The more you brew, so let's just start with the basics. It's not rocket science. And the people that do it, it works.
It's I'll throw another Joeism out there. You sell so much, you go out of business.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's really what it comes down to. The amount of times we would sit down with these brands and go through the pricing, and they would just say, oh, yeah, you're just going to rip us off on pricing. And we'd be like, well, what are your margins? And they'd be like, well, we don't even know our margins. Well, we're not going to sit. I mean, oh, yes, our pricing is somewhat formulaic, but it's still customized to an extent that we're not going to slap some margin that's going to drive your business down. So we would have brands that would come out and be starting out, and we would have a scaled pricing where it would be like, okay, you know, your margins are so thin right now. We're going to take thinner margins for the next 5 years, and then we're going to grow our margin back, and then you're going to regain it as you scale. And that concept was so challenging to get people to understand sometimes. And then they would think like, oh, we're going to take more, so I need more. And it's like, no, understanding the long-term development of that relationship and that repayment with capital, and understanding like when we were in a position with that business where from a capital standpoint, we could eat something for a little while, you know what I mean, to build a brand over time. And I think that understanding was even lost on a lot of brands where they didn't even understand that was something that we didn't have to do. You know what I mean? We didn't have to build that. We could have easily just said it's 25%, it's 30%, and call it a day. You know what I mean? And then let everybody figure it out from there. Walk me through your decision to stay. I want to hear your passion and your decision. We got about 15 minutes here before we close out. I won't go over, don't worry. And talk to me about your passion in staying in the industry. So obviously you did an acquisition, you did a sale, you placed everybody for the most part of what you were looking for. And then for yourself, you made that conscious decision as far as what you were going to do in your next chapter of your life. So tell me what coaxed you or convinced you to stay in the industry and literally go help others? Because you're not choosing an easy path. You could have chose the path of being a consultant, work with Heineken and Coors or whoever else and call it a day. But you're choosing a path of that people that are not going to have a ton of money. They might have to do more commission based or, profit sharing with you, things like that. And talk to me through the passion you have, because obviously this is now you're in it with yourself, and it's a different type of business now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. If I didn't think there was money in it, I wouldn't have done it. So it's, I mean,
right.
But
you're not not sugarcoating that part at all.
Yeah, for sure. But no, I mean, I know the real value that I bring and how I can help these breweries. Again, there's two things. One, I just like doing hard things, for better or worse.
Yes, we're on the same page there, man.
There may be a point where I call a massive brewery and try and sit. There was a couple of vague offers that got passed my way, and it's like, sure, I can sit in the office 3 days and I can go play golf 2 days. It's just like, what am I doing? Sitting around. So I've got to do something and be active and be building something. But also, I know there is help, and I'm very aware that, my mom tells me all the time, 2/3 of these breweries just aren't going to want your help, and it's the ego thing. And yeah, that's fine. Screw them, but there are breweries that do want to succeed, and they, have a use for this value and this knowledge, and being able to look. I've been a small business owner. There's those days where you can't figure out, why you're not making more money or how to grow, and just being able to help for an affordable price, grow. And it's a small business, dude, I'm sure, it has an effect on your life. If you own a small business and it's not going well, it sucks can really affect, but just help these people, because some of the people that want to do it, they just need that little help, and it'll put them over the top. And really just taking all the experience that I've gotten over 13 or so years in the industry, and knowing that I can bring some value. I think that fires me up.
Walk back before to Steel City. What was the precipice there? What were you doing prior to Steel City, and then what was the light bulb moment with creating that business?
Yeah, so I had a retail beer store that I opened at 22, right after college, which was the start of a decade of just taking a beating. But I did that for like 5 years. It was great. I'd kind of started to look to open a second one and maybe do like a small regional, almost chain of beer stores. And we just looked at the investment with grocery stores starting to sell beer here, with Walmart, Sheetz, all that get-go. It was just going to be such a tough hill to climb. We were having lunch with our liquor lawyer one day, and he said to me, you should open a wholesaler. There's not really a good dedicated craft wholesaler here in Western PA. And as craft's starting to take off, it's really a niche that should be filled. So we did that. We opened Steel City in early 2016. So it was basically just a full 8 years. And it was great. The brands, we were lucky that we got a lot of great brands like New Trail, Blake's Hard Cider, The Alchemist, Maine Beer Company, great beer. So that was a lot of our success, is just being able to get great beer in. But yeah, I thought there would be a lot more growth opportunity in wholesale. So I got into that. I had no clue what I was getting into, probably for the better, and kind of, we had some early success, we did, but the first 3 years was really just like figuring out any clue of what we were doing, like not just delivering beer, but running an efficient wholesale operation.
Yeah, I think those trial and errors are so valuable to these brands today. And I'll close us out to there as this part. Anywhere people can, and I'm going to pause it for the recording part, and then I want to talk to you business things. Cause I have some ideas I want to share with you while we still have a couple minutes.
Yeah.
So in closing, where anybody can find you now with your new venture, and on LinkedIn, name and business and all that stuff, and any other social medias.
So if you go on LinkedIn, it's just 5-Star Beverage Group. It's 5starbeverage.com. We've got, all of our services and social links on there, and you can see some of our insights. We're posting content every day, whether it's LinkedIn articles, or we're on TikTok now, which is a new frontier. TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, pretty much everything's under 5-Star Beverage, but it's all under that website. There's links to everything on there. And it's got a bunch of, like I said, different materials. So if you're curious about, what services we offer, what help your brewery might need, and you're not sure, we've got it broken down by, different segments of the industry, and how we can help in different areas. So it's all pretty clear. And, we do free consultation calls. So we'll spend up to an hour on the phone with you, just breaking down, the history of your brewery, what's working, what's not, kind of what some of your concerns are, and how we can help. I know whether it's like consultants, lawyers, that's always my concern is, I need help. I'm not sure what help I need. If I get on the phone, it's going to cost me $300. Just getting on a phone call with you and kind of seeing how we can help, but everything's right there on the website.
That's perfect. Well, Shane, thank you so much for your time today. I can't like say it enough. And this is definitely not going to be our last conversation. I'm excited that we met today. I appreciate you being open to the experience of hopping on the record button with a stranger on the Google Meet. So I appreciate that very much. And you enjoy your day.
Thank you. You too. I appreciate you having me on.
If you have a great story or know someone that does, check out our website at thefreemindpodcast.com and submit your story today or nominate a friend. Thanks. Have a great day, everybody. Keep listening.